Do the ends justify the means? If something is good, should you do anything to make that good thing happen? Or are there lines that you shouldn't cross? I'm going to talk about that while I draw this. Welcome to Illo Talk. I am Corey Kerr, and this is episode 192. So I want to talk about this concept that's going on basically all the time, where a lot of people will say that the ends justify the means, meaning that doing something bad or doing something that you disagree with or doing something that goes against your moral whatever is okay as long as the end result of that thing is good. I think there's some significant problems with this. And I want to talk about Maximilien Robespierre, everyone's favorite revolutionary. So anyway, Maximilien was in charge for just a little bit. Robespierre was a dude who had a lot of really good things about him. He was anti-king, anti-dictator. He was for political equality across the board, regardless of skin color or gender. He was for the suffrage, the ability to vote and to control your destiny, including women voting. And he was also an abolitionist. He sought to end slavery. There were colonies that France was allowing a constitutional slavery to go on, and he was very against all of those things. He was also called the Incorruptible, Maximilien Robespierre the Incorruptible, because of his adherence to his principles of virtue. So he was considered by many people to be a really good guy, and he embodied the spirit of the French Revolution. He was at the height of his power for about 10 months, and during that time, 10,000 people died in prison, and 17,000 people were killed, mostly by the guillotine. And these are people that were counter-revolutionaries, or, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, accused of being counter-revolutionaries, or even not even accused, but suspected, or thought to be counter-revolutionaries. The problem is that Robespierre wanted to do really, really good things, but actually felt that it was justified to do very, very evil things to accomplish those good things. They deposed the king, and then things got weird, right? So then they tried to decide what it was that they should do with France. And he was put on a committee of general security and was taking over the kind of internal police, the secret police, the whatever you want to call it. And he said things like, "It is time that equality bore its scythe above all heads. It's time to horrify all the conspirators so that legislators place terror on the order of the day." So this is actually said by a member of the committee, not by Robespierre. But the blade of the law should hover over all the guilty. Great, that all sounds great, as long as you have the ability to discern who's good and who's bad, right? Except, should we be killing people? Should we be just beheading people in the streets? He also went on to say that slowness of judgment is equal to impunity, and he later said, "Uncertainty of punishments encourages all the guilty." And he instituted something and oversaw something that was called the Terror. And the Terror was actually a public policy, a law, during the French Revolution, sanctioned by the government to strike fear in the hearts of those that were counter-revolutionaries, those that were trying to overthrow the revolution that had just happened. He is quoted as saying, "Terror is nothing more than speedy, severe, and inflexible justice. It is thus an emanation of virtue. It is less a principle in itself than a consequence of the general principle of democracy, applied to the most pressing needs of the fatherland." So he's justifying this, and he said, if virtue, and this is a paraphrase, but if virtue is a principle or attribute of a nation at peace, then a nation at war would be virtue with terror. Virtue enforced by terror. And so he's got all of these different things, and he was definitely somebody who said that the ends justify the means, right? So because the end result of what he wanted was political equality, freedom for all, lack of dictatorship. Everybody gets to vote, everybody gets to own land, everybody gets to choose their own thing, the end of slavery, all of those things. He killed 27,000 people in 10 months because he felt like the ends justified the means. Now, the interesting thing about this was that it was really difficult to tell who was bad and who was good, because it was all based on accusation. And there were definitely cases where somebody would use the terror, which is beheading people daily, to get rid of a political rival, get rid of competition, get rid of somebody that they just didn't like, just by accusing them of doing something. And it actually became official policy during the French Revolution near the end of the terror, to expedite the process so that trials had become cumbersome. And so they said, you know what, we are pretty good at judging who's who in the zoo here, and so let's just kind of speed this up a little bit and do away with trial. People were being killed so frequently and so quickly that it started to get out of control. It started to get to the point where everybody was wondering when they would be next. Robespierre made a speech. After having several attempts on his life, there was a member of the committee who snuck into his house with 2 knives, and she was caught, apprehended, and killed because of that. And then there were multiple attempts on his life. He gave a giant speech that basically said, the counter-revolution is everywhere. Everyone is potentially an enemy. We really need to root this out. It's even amongst this committee that I'm sitting on right now. And they said, who are you talking about? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. So then he gave that later at a club that he was part of, the Jacobins, and it was received exceptionally well by that group of people. And it turns out that he just freaked everybody out. And so the killings had become so arbitrary because of the momentum of the thing that it got to the point where nobody could trust it, even though he was the incorruptible, even though he didn't seek for any gain of his own, even though he was loved by the people because of his swift justice, and because of his incorruptible nature, because he didn't take bribes and all that stuff. And that was the perception. There's a lot of evidence to the contrary. But he was killed by guillotine by the committee that he was on. He tried to kill himself, or maybe was shot. There's a little, it's kind of up in the air. Anyway, he was the one that put to death Danton, one of the major early revolutionaries of the French Revolution that overthrew the king. The reason I bring all of this up is because this seems to be happening a lot today. Not so much that people are being guillotined, but there's this concept that, that person said something that I don't like. I want his job. I want him to starve. I want his family to starve. I want him not to be able to pay his rent. And I've just noticed that there's this political climate on both sides of the aisle, both from the left and from the right, where we are just out for blood. Heads are rolling. And it's becoming so much so that we're skipping trials. That we're there's just this terror that people are scared to say or do anything in case they reap the rewards of the this kind of public vitriol. This idea that we don't need evidence. We just need blood. And the end result of that is you don't know when you're going to be next. And so all I'm really saying is that we should stick to the concept of principled action at all times. Not just principled action that we hold the other guys to, but principled action at all times, because the ends do not justify the means. No matter how good the cause is evil action is evil action. So, just, I don't know, this is something I've been thinking about. So, that's it. Here's the thing I drew. We'll catch you guys later. If you want to see my stuff, go to coreykerr.com and all that jazz.